So Sinners is a new horror film from writer and director Ryan Coogler. And I think, a lot of people will probably look at this film and just say, "Oh, it's like an Americana period piece, Dusk from Dawn." Because like the film From Dusk Till Dawn, where it started off as like a crime film, and then it quickly mutated into like a vampire survival film. Because on the basic level, sure, Sinners is that. It's about a bunch of people who want to set up their own juke joint in the South, and they struggle to make it work, and then out of nowhere in come the vampires, and then they have to survive the night as vampires try to kill everybody inside their little club. But I think that is way too much of a reduction, because the thing is, From Dusk Till Dawn, it was a fun film, but I think that subversion relied a little bit more on the surprise of it all. Within Sinners, there's so much work placed into just making a great period drama with so much going on that by the time the vampires arrive, you almost kind of forget that like this is a vampire film. Because I kind of love how the marketing, tries a little bit to cover up the fact that it's a vampire film. But even if I do stress that, you tend to forget about that just because they set up the characters so well here that it's just great to like watch the drama unfold. That the vampires don't even feel like the big draw here. The vampires just feel like the sprinkles on top of this, giant ice cream sundae of a film that Coogler has made here. Just because, like, first off, the performances are great here. You have Michael B. Jordan playing two roles as twin brothers Smoke and Stack, who have returned to Mississippi after having gone to Chicago, and they're trying to set up their own juke joint and just, struggling to kind of like reassert themselves and just and just find something more in life, both like financially and romantically, especially with them returning to their home in Mississippi and having all these ghosts from the past kind of follow them, and just realizing that they're, some things have changed. Like they have a lot more sway because now, they got a lot more money. They've got cool new suits. They got big business endeavors, and they can intimidate. They could, if someone's trying to like even think about steal their stuff, they could just shoot them in the streets, especially for, early 1900s America. That's just the vibe that Smoke and Stack have. But I love the way that they kind of, how they try to inspire this character called Preacher Boy, or Sammy, played by Miles Caton. And I kind of love how, Sammy's very impressionable. Like, he works on a plantation, but he has big dreams of playing the guitar and, just, devoting his life to the blues, especially since his father, who is a preacher, would rather that, he just take up the profession of being a religious figure. And Sammy's like, no, I actually want to, play the guitar. And he's pretty damn good at it, as Smoke and Stack end up finding out. So they said, okay, let's hire him for the juke joint. And he's really good there. But I love the fact that as Sammy starts learning more about these two, he starts asserting himself more, and he realizes that, look, these guys might have it all going on, but they might not have the best outlook on life, and I might have to choose it myself. I might have to actually, like, stand up to these guys. And especially, like, there's a lot of different characters here, and there's a lot of drama going on with all of them. Like, you have Haley Steinfeld playing Mary, who is Stack's ex-girlfriend, who they have very conflicting feelings about, because Mary initially, it seems like she could just, go off to a safe life, but she can't get Stack out of her life. She needs him in there, and Stack just won't have any of it, especially since he doesn't like the backgrounds that they come from. You have other characters here. You have a Smoke's wife, Annie, played by Wunmi Masako, and I especially loved the scene where they reunite. Like, he meets her at her like little shack of a house, and within that scene, like, there's a contemplation on the life that he left behind, the child who died too young, the conflicting nature they have on their perceptions of belief and the spiritual, and then it just dives straight into the sexual. There are so many intense moments here, and not to mention the fact that, like, the Americana, like the blues soundtrack, is constantly going throughout. There's a progressive vibe throughout of just music throughout this film, not just like blues either. I think just like in music in general, like they make it clear from the very beginning, this movie is going to be about music, not exactly musical per se. There are musical numbers, but it's very much highlighting how like music can be like a supernatural force that can summon spirits and monsters. In fact, like that's probably one of like the most visually stunning moments. Is there's a scene where Sammy is just playing the guitar and getting lost in the music, and you start seeing like music of the past and the future just bleeding all into the same scene, and music from like different cultures and people just all linger around like this juke joint as the camera follows everything that's going on here. And it's just there's something so mesmerizing about that scene that you just want to get lost in it longer and longer. And even by the time you get the vampires that show up here, like especially like the fact that it's an Irish vampire played by Jack O'Connell. The music doesn't stop there either. Like when his character of Remick shows up, he's playing like a little bit of like some country, bringing out the banjo, and then he'll even go into like Irish jigs. And just the moment that happens, like there's a scene where him and all his vampire friends are dancing around and he's leading this Irish jig, and I'm just like, I don't know how anyone could hate this film. This is a vampire film where you have stomping blues and vampire Irish jigs, and there's nothing else out there like this film that to just say like it's like an Americana version of From Dusk Till Dawn is a huge insult to this film, especially the way that the film leans a little bit more into the thematic, because you would think, okay, so the vampires, they can't enter the juke joint. They have to find a way to kind of entice these people to come out and get the best of them. Now, there's a few ways that they can do this. Like obviously, they threaten their families. They try to woo these people into getting so angry that they'll want to come out of the joint and assault them. And of course, it's a trap when that happens. But I do love how Remick's character stresses community more than anything. Like he doesn't just play on like the obvious here. Like, that's like the cool thing about like the people who are stuck in this joint who have to defend themselves from vampires. They're fairly smart, and I think that's mostly because of Annie, who does believe in the supernatural and does take note of it, where she kind of like leads. Like she knows all the rules of vampires before the vampires arrive. So like you feel a little bit more confident in her hands. But of course, things will end up going south eventually. But the fact that Remick stresses that, look, you're black people setting up a juke joint in like the early 1900s Mississippi. There are racists around here. They're going to come after you. Why don't you just join up with us vampires and we'll take care of all those racists, and we'll have our own sense of community. And I think that is such a fascinating angle to appeal to for such like an evil force like that with vampires, because it's so easy. Like I thought for sure there was going to be like more of a seduction angle, especially with how like hot and steamy it gets in this film. Like there are a few sex scenes, but also just like sex scenes mid the heat of the South, where you see like the glistening sweat and just the sensation all around you of this summer in Mississippi. And just like I thought for sure there'd be like more of a romantic, especially with how Sammy starts fancying this singer of Perline, played by Jamie Lawson, which, holy crap, her song and dance number is so damn good. I feel like I could say that for just about everyone in this film. Like all these great supporting roles too, especially like Lee Jun Lee, who plays like Grace, who's this very like determined Asian American who helps out with the juke joint, but is also very emotional and very determined, and she doesn't take any guff from anybody. You have Omar Miller playing like Cornbread, who could kind of be like a forgettable role, but I do love like kind of the bite he has to his character. It feels like, like he's a big guy who you feel like if he was on the plantation, he'd just be, just kind of taking orders. But when he's around people like Smoke and Stack, just like, no, I'm going to assert myself. I'm going to stand up for myself. And then there's, last but not least, how could you forget Delroy Lindo in this film as Delta Slim, a pianist who drowns himself in drink and is just having too much fun. Delroy Lindo eats up his role. He is having too much fun. Let's put it this way. There's a scene where he has to distract some vampires, and he does it in a big way. He doesn't just have the funniest lines in this film. He kind of feels like the beating heart of the energy that keeps these characters going. And it's just, every scene he's in is so much fun. And yeah, just the great drama from Michael B. Jordan, just like the innocence with Maya Katan, just the sexiness with Hailey Steinfeld and Wumi Masako and Jack O'Connell's Irish Shakes. There are so many great performances here, and they all swirl around this great story about just community and music and being tempted by evil. And it's just, God, I love Sinners so much. You need to see this film. If you haven't seen it in the theaters yet, please go see it. I could not get enough of this film. You are going to kick yourself when you see this at home and realize that you should have seen this in the theater with the crowd, because, oh my God, this was a lot of fun to watch with the crowd. I love the hell out of Sinners.